What's going on, everybody? You've got the cardboard coach here with your boy, Coach Co. And team, today we've got a very special guest on the podcast. We've got Troy RIKE, aka Trike 415. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Excited to be on. I mentioned to you a little earlier. I'm still recovering from the Expo a little bit, but yeah, great spirits. I'm excited to be on here and talk. We had a good talk over at the eBay booth over in Canada, so it's cool to just kind of get to continue that conversation a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to provide a little bit of context for people who might know you and be like, what the hell is this guy talking about? They saw each other this
Yeah.
weekend. But Troy was actually at the Toronto Sports Card Expo, which we just had this past weekend. I had the pleasure of meeting him for the first time. And we shared the stage at the eBay booth for, a brief kind of powwow while he showed off some of his pickups for the weekend. And also we just talked cards and it was a great opportunity for me to get to know you. And I was like, you know what, man, like we were, we're playing well off each other. I'm like, let's keep this conversation going. So I'm happy to have you.
Yeah. It's great to be on. It was a great talk. It felt like kind of like the big time there at the eBay booth.
Yeah.
We had an overhead camera for the cards and everything. So I was like, all right, I'm whatever you're rocking with, I'm in. You do it right for sure for the interviews.
I appreciate you. It's a little less tech involved in this one, isn't there?
It works. It's simpler. I'm also a little less tired, maybe, so that'll counteract each other.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, man. So that was your first time in Toronto, correct?
Yeah, first time, second time, even in Canada. Like I stopped over in Vancouver for like 2 days when I was younger, so hardly even count that. So yeah, it was like a brand new experience for me.
I love that. And you went out of your way to come early. And when we talked about this previously, you had mentioned like, if I'm going to be going there for the first time ever, second time in Canada, like you want to make the most out of that. And I think that that's huge. I think a lot of times, if we are traveling for shows, we discount the fact that there's so much like culture like that goes and takes like place outside of these shows. And if you
Mhm.
have the opportunity to be somewhere, maybe planning to be there for a few extra days to just kind of like see the landscape might actually be like the best call. Talk to me a little bit about your time before the expo.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I definitely agree. Like, I just can't imagine going to somewhere and just seeing the inside of a convention center the whole time. And maybe actually, it's funny. I this just clicked in my head, so I'm already like bragging about myself 2 minutes in here. But I played college basketball, and we traveled to all these amazing cities. You know what I mean? Like every weekend, we were in New York, LA. I mean, we got to go to like Bahamas and Hawaii, which was amazing. We actually got to see that. But the point of it was, whenever we traveled, we never left the hotel. It was strictly basketball, which I guess kind of makes sense. Like I have no hard feelings to our coach. He wanted us to
Yeah,
focus on winning, but
yeah.
whenever I went somewhere, I was like, dang, I wish I could actually. I'm all the way in this amazing place I've never been before. I don't get to experience any of it. So now that I kind of get to make my own rules, I was like, I'm really making a point to experience every city I'm in because dollars and cents wise, like just calling it what it is, at least for me, right? Like going to Toronto is expensive. In my opinion, if you just, I mean, there's good and bad, but it doesn't always, the pure dollars and cents doesn't necessarily add up all the time, or at least you don't get like the maximum
Yeah,
ROI.
yeah.
But for me, like that experience is just priceless. So all that to be said, yeah, the first couple days, did the normal Toronto things. I went to the CN Tower. A little later, we went to a Blue Jays game. I was like, I want to see Drake's house. We didn't actually get to see that, but that was high on my list. All you can eat sushi. We went to what is it, Dundas Square. I'm
Yeah.
definitely saying that wrong,
No, no, you
but
said it right. You said it right.
okay,
Yeah,
there we go. We'll
yeah.
we'll take it. I was working on my accent and everything. It was just cool. I didn't get to see as much as I wanted to because the show definitely took up the majority of the time. But
Yeah.
more so, I will say I was with my guy. Shout out Ben Carlos, Ben J Cardboard. He's a local. He's not from Toronto proper, but the area.
Yeah.
Just seeing, even though I didn't, it's actually like I learned more just seeing things through his eyes
Hmm.
necessarily than if I just wandered through Toronto by myself for
Of
3 days.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely like maximize your experience going to a place with like someone who's familiar with it.
Mhm.
And it's funny you said, I travel somewhere, like I can't imagine just being inside a convention center. Like especially
Yeah.
when I first started traveling for shows, that's all I did. Like it
Mhm.
was just like airport, Uber, convention center, like
Yeah.
or airport, Uber, hotel, convention center. And as I've continued to travel, I'm like, I have to spend time outside. I have to like go outside of even like the little bubble. Like what I've started doing is getting an Airbnb. And so even if everyone's
Mm.
staying at like the hotel, I'll like stay a little bit further out. And like even if I have to travel in, like not much further, but like I want it to be less likely that I say no to things after all this is done. Do you know what I mean? Like
For sure.
and say no to things is not even like other people asking me. It's more so like me being like, okay, I'm already here. I might as well go do X, Y, Z, right? So it's funny because I it definitely took some like progressing, much like kind of collecting. When you start collecting, you
Mhm.
you collect one way, and then like it's like when you start traveling, you travel one way, and then as you continue to travel, you're like, hold on a second, like I might not have the opportunity to come back here, so at least spend some time and enjoy, like I said previously, like just the culture and the food, the different dynamics. There's just so much to be learned when you're traveling. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting.
It's I just wanted to but sorry, real quick.
No, no,
It's
don't
funny.
apologize at
It's
all,
fun.
man.
It's funny you mentioned the car journey versus the travel journey because it was actually very similar for me. Like when I first got into cards, I think most people, unless you're like completely loaded, I was buying like I remember bidding on a card on eBay for like $30, and I'm like shaking. I'm like, oh my God, like this is a lot of money to spend. Like you better like I hope Brandon Ingram really takes off.
Yeah,
And then I went all the way. Eventually, I was lucky enough, like I bought some 5-figure cards. And then now I've kind of like, then, I lost some money, got a, like, it was just kind of a lot. And now I feel kind of more comfortable in the 500 to, 1,000 range or 200 to 1,000 range.
yeah,
Which I think a lot of people maybe have had a similar journey. And then with the travel, it was the same thing, right? Like, so I began just like you, convention center. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make the most of this. And then we were going out, and I was like, we stayed out too late, and I was missing trains to the show. And like I would show up the next day like dead. And I was just like, you know what? This is not sustainable. Like
yeah,
burning the candle at you've gone too far in trying to enjoy the city. So
yeah,
now I'm kind of like, all right, you know what? Maybe the first day I'm there, you're not doing a ton at the show. It's the preview night, Thursday night. Go and have one beer or go and experience things. And then the next night, maybe Friday, you get some sleep, and then Saturday trade night. So I'm finding that balance now. That's kind of in the middle. I think that's important for everyone.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. And it's like very similar with me. Um, it's just a natural progression, right? Because you're like, wait, like
Mm,
I feel like I'm kind of holding back in some
mhm.
way, and you're like, okay, well now I have to experience all the other, the whole other side.
Yeah,
And I can distinctly remember myself like just buying the same kind of variety of you spend 30-40 bucks on a card, especially like
mm,
very early on. You're like, oh my God, like, is this going to
yeah,
go up? Like, and especially
mhm,
kind of the dynamic that I was buying cards in like 2020 was like, everything was like going up. And you're like, am I going to pick
yep,
the right one? Like,
mhm,
I'm still going to worry about it. And then you venture outside that and you're even more afraid, but you're like, no, I have to do
yeah,
it because I see other people doing it and they're making money. And then you take a bath on a few things. I was talking this weekend about. I actually just moved my Tatis. I had a Tatis rookie auto that I bought. I gotta say it was like
mhm,
2021. It was like right before he
yeah,
got popped for steroids, and like it was one
mm,
of those cards I was holding on to, and I was like, man, I took a bath on this. Like it's time to finally move on from it. I got like a decent trade offer. I was like, it's just been sitting, and it's just sitting not because I like you anymore. It's just sitting because I'm like upset that that I that I bought at the worst possible time. So I
yeah.
just kind of accept my fate. I grabbed something that I actually enjoyed looking at, and everyone's happy.
For sure. I think it's like, and I still need to learn this, but sometimes it is as simple as, and I've taken a bath on plenty of things. It's like, do you really think it's going to go up though? And it's like, I know that sounds like I know people know that. So I don't want to sound like condescending or whatever, because I have to remind myself, even with stuff, now I have to do it with stuff I haven't taken a bath on, right? It's like if I have a card and someone gives me an offer for $50 on it, I'm kind of like, okay, what is the max you think you'll ever get for this card? I'm like, $60 maybe. I never think it'll be 70. It's definitely not going up to 100. I'm kind of like, well, just take the 50 then, man. If you think your best possible scenario is 60, take the 50. Or and it's the same thing with taking a bath. It's like, all right, do we think that Tatis auto is going to go back up? Maybe a tiny bit is your best case scenario. Just it, in that, and in my head, like I don't know the specifics of Tatis because I don't follow baseball super well, but at least with cards I'm on, I'm like it's a lot more likely it's going to go down more than it's going to go up more. So I'm like, just take the money, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And there's just so much to be said about like for me it was a matter of like yeah, I was a little bit upset that like the money
Mm-hmm.
I'd put into it wasn't there anymore. But also just like if I have something that I'm not comfortable owning, for me it's like not worth the stress. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like and I say stress very loosely. I'm not like staying up at night like
Mm-hmm.
because of the price of this card because I never would have purchased it in the first place. And that's one thing that I make sure to tell everybody is like, just don't buy cards that stress you out. You know what I mean? Like if you put enough money into a card where like you're stressed about it, like you've probably gone too far. But for me, it was like if I don't even enjoy sifting through this thing, like the holding process, like especially because so much of what I talk about on a regular basis has to do with just like enjoying the journey. And I'm like, if I'm not enjoying the journey of like watching this guy come back, then like, what are we doing here? Like I'd much prefer to just move out of this.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. You really like you've already made a bunch of things click in my head, so I really
I'm
appreciate this.
trying,
Like
man, trying.
that's I kind of never realized that. As I mentioned, I kind of used to do more of the high end cards, and it was just stressful, man. Like it didn't really like I didn't feel like I had the right. It didn't sit well with me, right? Like if you buy a $3,000 card and you're trying to flip it for 3,500, the things you need to do are one have like balls of steel, which is not exactly something I have. I get stressed, and you have to be aggressive is the wrong word, but very like proactive in trying to
Yes.
move it, right? You
Yeah.
got to walk around and you got to message 10 dealers and walk up to 50 and be like, ask for, and then they say three and be able to get them to meet at 3.5. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally fair to do. It's just not something that I'm good at. I was like, I know I'm not gonna go and message 10 dealers. So maybe having it versus the low end stuff, I think we talked about it before. Like I know I'm more of a grinder. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can just grind and that's how I was in sports, like just the effort. And then I guess that's kind of how it translates. But I'm curious. I'm gonna ask you a question real quick
Go
because I
for
don't
it.
really know. Like
Yeah.
how involved are you in like flipping and stuff like that, or is it more mostly collecting, or what kind of stuff do you do?
Yeah, of course. First, I'm going to point out the fact that like that both are levels of grind, and
Uh
everything is kind of a grind. It's just a matter of like
yeah.
you really establishing, and like you could be anybody right now.
Mm,
Just a listener. You establishing what grinding you feel like doesn't feel like work.
yeah.
That makes sense, right? Because like going up to dealers and haggling from, and I say
Mm,
haggling again in like the best way,
yeah.
shape, or form, but like negotiating even from like a $4,000 price tag to a $3,500 price tag, knowing that this is a $4,000 card
Mm,
could feel like extreme work to you and I, and it does for me too. So
yeah.
don't worry. Um, but someone else might look at a dollar box and be like, man, that's too much work, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not the grinding I want to do. I'd rather have like those like negotiation grinds. So I think
Hmm.
that like grinding takes place. You cannot get anywhere without putting in the work,
Yeah.
but it's just important to figure out what work doesn't feel like work with you, you know?
Hmm. Right.
Um, and that's just like that was like the throwaway for the listeners. So in terms of like my own
No, it's true.
collecting, yeah, I flip. I say flip very loosely. So what I like
Hmm.
doing most is prospecting, specifically
Okay.
when it comes to hockey. I find that the release schedule is something I'm really comfortable with. So when a player's card releases, I think that there's usually about 3, 4 years before he comes like anywhere close to uh I would say like hitting his peak. And I
Okay.
say so I usually have about 3 years to kind of prospect on that guy from the point of release. So I'll never buy when something first comes out. I'll usually buy like injuries. I'll buy like poor seasons. And I find that like those kind of the combination of getting prospects or being early on prospects rather, buying the injury and even if even if I sell when the guy comes back, like people just completely forget for like 3, 4 months. And so I'll just use that um the capital that I acquired during that process to essentially field my set collecting. So I'm a big set collector. There's like
Hmm.
probably 4 or 5 different sets I'm putting together. And then those are like the essentially the big goals I have, and they get
Yeah.
funded through these like a lot of like small transactions, and also just kind of keeps me involved in like sport and like those sports that I enjoy. So it's like for me, it's like fantasy hockey, but
Hmm.
I have my team that I can pick that no one else can
Yeah.
take players from. Yeah, so and then when it comes to like I have like a few cards that I don't plan on moving anytime soon, and those are mainly soccer cards to be honest. So I
Hmm.
have like Maradona's like 1979 Panini Calcio sticker. I have like a bunch of
Nice.
those. I'm a big sticker guy. I've got a few like Ronaldo mega cracks because I'm Portuguese, and I think that's
Mm,
that's like the most undervalued card
for
known to
sure.
mankind. But I'm also again super biased. But yeah, that's kind of like what my collecting looks like.
Interesting. And it's funny, that's what got me into cards kind of. It was really just like I love that prospecting and that fantasy team
Yeah,
element. Like I've told the story a million times, but John Collins was my teammate at Wake Forest, and I was like, man, he's super underrated. I want to buy some of it. I think like his stuff, he's gonna get more notoriety. And then my friends was like, you should buy his cards then, if you really believe that. And that was the first cards I bought.
really.
Unfortunately, yeah, yeah,
That's
that's really what got me into
John
it.
Collins.
Yep, John
I
Collins
love
was my
that,
guy.
man. I love that.
Um, didn't I haven't retired off my John Collins cards yet, but you know they're part of the PC now, which is
Yeah,
cool. I just wanted to support him. I definitely didn't go into it thinking it was going to be. It's more just
yeah,
a fun type of thing, like you said, fantasy. But
of course.
unfortunately, now the sports I do, basketball, soccer, and a little bit of Formula One, it's that prospecting is just doesn't exist. So it sounds like in hockey there kind of is like a healthy ecosystem in terms of taking shots. Where in basketball and so it's like literally, I was like, I know it's going to be a risk, right? Like just give me like a 30% chance, give me like a 20% chance if I choose the right guy. Now how it is in soccer, like I mean, I guess in like
Yeah.
Jude Bellingham, Erling Haaland, that's if you hit it exactly right, then you'll if you hit it exactly right and then sell at the perfect time, then you'll make a little bit. I'm like, come on, man, this doesn't really seem fair. This is
It
too
is
tough.
it is crazy, man. Like because I mean when Mukoku stuff came out, like I'm still like a big Mukoku guy,
Yeah,
and not even because like I have some of his stuff, but because I'm like this
yeah,
guy's like 16 years old starting for Dortmund.
mm,
Like
yeah,
I was like I just don't think people understand how difficult that is. Like this
mm,
guy, he scored his first Champions League goal when he was literally the day he was 16, turned 16. It's
mm,
like that's bonkers,
yeah,
and but like his prices are they'll probably never return to what they were, even if he becomes a
mm,
great player. And
yeah,
that was kind of for me like the beginning of the end when it comes to like prospecting for soccer. Like I think that there's still a window, much like there is in like hockey, where as long as you don't buy right off the hop, like I mean, if you were to buy, let's say Pedri right now, like Pedri's still a great player. He's injured.
yeah,
And I'm not telling anyone what to do, in any way, shape, or form. But I'm saying if you were
yeah,
a believer in Pedri 12 months ago during, when he was playing every single game for Barcelona and Spain, then like why are you less of a believer today? Same thing with the guys like Gavi and stuff like that, right? So I'm not saying that those prices are ever going to return to where they were, but they're definitely down. And if they
mm,
end up becoming who you thought they were going to be before, or who the market thought they were going to be before, I mean, at the very least, there's probably like a 30 or 40% increase there. You know what I mean? If they end up where they're supposed to. Now, I will say that the prospecting hype definitely keeps me out of ripping, which is probably a good
mm,
thing, because I'm like
yeah,
I have no desire to, even if you hit the guy, the goal is to sell right away. And for me, that my brain doesn't work that way. It's like, why
mm,
would you know what I mean? Like, why would you want to sell this guy? Like, I want to support this guy. Like, that's why we're buying the product, not to throw this onto somebody else. It's like a flame, like hot potato. I just
yeah.
don't know. It's an interesting the prospecting dynamic.
For sure. I will. I agree with. So you're thinking with Pedri and everything. Like I totally agree with that because a lot of times it's like, oh, if you bought him, we feel say, oh, if you were buying him at 2,000, Now he's 400. He's still the same player. Like, why wouldn't you buy it now?
Yeah.
The one thing I'll slightly disagree with, at least personally from what
No,
I've seen,
go for it. That's
is
what we're here for.
with football, right? Like, I don't know how much you follow American football, but like Kenny Pickett
Yeah.
was a bust at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little harsh to call him that, but he got traded,
I
and he's
hated
the
him
backup.
from the get go, bro. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I couldn't stand him.
Well, I hated him too, because I really hated him. He played Wake Forest, my college alma mater, in the bowl game, and he did
Yeah.
that fake slide, and then he took off for the touchdown. I was like,
Yeah.
that was dirty. They changed the rule just because of him, but that,
Yeah.
that's more of an aside. But I
Yeah.
don't think it'll, if for whatever reason you love Kenny Pickett, it won't take a ton for him to necessarily go back up a little bit, right? Like, if the starter goes down, or maybe a year from now he gets traded to another team and gets a little run, his stuff could go up again. We've seen it before in these other sports, where even if there's just an article that comes up, oh,
Yeah.
the who's he with now? The Eagles, I think, or like the Eagles coaching staff is really impressed with what he's been doing in training camp, you'll see a bump. Um, and in other sports as well, basketball a tiny bit, but in soccer, like, what is it going to take for Pedri to get people's attention again? If he comes back
You're right.
and he just becomes a solid starting, like, if he comes back and then kind of cements his place in the Barcelona starting lineup, that would be like a pretty good trajectory for him. Like, that would be very
Yeah.
good. I don't think that'll cause movement in the card market.
You're right.
You have to really become a top five outside of the beginning window where everyone's just super excited. You kind of, from what I've seen, you have to become a top five player for people really to notice. Like Makoko, you know what I mean? A great player. Let's say he moved to like a Crystal Palace or somewhere like that, and scored a couple, like started being kind of like a solid striker for them. I don't think it would necessarily. It hasn't historically moved the
Yeah. Well,
needle
I mean,
in the
even like
card market.
Ansu Fati, right? Like he
Yeah,
moved to Brighton, and they just, I mean, he's playing pretty well, but that no one cares. Yeah,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
right.
I invested
I,
in Adeyemi, another Dortmund guy. He's kind of come back and started scoring some. No one cares. No one cares at all. So
yeah,
that's been the discouraging thing. You have to be one of those dudes for people to notice.
I think that in soccer, I kind of saw this coming, but I didn't, if that makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
because it's a very slow game. Like I say slow, like from
Yeah.
people watching, like I mean, you score one goal in a game, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's say we average two for argument's sake. So keeping people's attention is very tough. The box scores never do like the game
Yeah.
justice. And so I think a lot of the way that people prospect is through like box scores. It's not actually from watching these players play.
And
Uh
highlights, right?
yeah,
Like Anthony Edwards dunks are there's not going to be an ESPN push notification.
of like a
Pedri
interception or like
90%
yeah,
possession today.
yes,
It's
yes,
not going to come
yes.
up.
Exactly. And so I think that midfielders in general, they just are probably, and again, like people, someone can call me out for this, but they're probably
Mhm.
not a great buy in soccer.
I
Like no
agree.
matter how good they are. Like,
Yeah.
and that's again one thing that's what kept me away from Pedri. That's what kept me away from Camavinga. Like I think Camavinga is unbelievable, and like even
Agreed.
better now as a wingback. But I'm just like he's never gonna get love. Same thing with like Gavi. Unless you're scoring goals and known for scoring goals, it's just very tough to compete with like I said, I think it's the like the box score mentality, and I
Yep.
think soccer more than anything suffers from that. I mean, fortunately, they started adding things like assists, which like they never
Mhm.
had before, so that kind of like adds, oh, he did something because like otherwise it'd be like, oh, he played the whole match, didn't do anything, and like like the Tifa score as well is
That's true.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
But like most people don't give a shit about that, so. Yeah, you're right. It's a very interesting dynamic. I mean, and even guys like Holland, right? Like the guy did maybe he broke EPL
Mhm.
records last year and his stuff is now down again, right? Like it's I don't know.
Yeah. It's just so much. It's a lot simpler in other sports for sure. Even the fact of like winning a ring, it's like everyone kind of recognized that. Like Holland won the treble.
Yeah.
People don't know it's soccer. He
Yeah.
won basically every single. So they won the European competition. They won all the best European club teams. He won the Premier League. They were the best team in England. And then they won the England, like they have a special tournament for all the teams. They won that as well. It's just weird, but it's like that didn't really do anything for anyone.
Julian Alvarez won four. You know, like he won
Yeah,
the World Cup too, and his stuff is not, it's like nowhere. And on top of
yeah,
that, De Bruyne got injured at the beginning of the year, and he balled his ass off, and it's still nothing. So yeah,
for
it's very,
sure.
I don't know,
I
it's
just
interesting.
I yeah, and I don't want to like talk it to death here. I know
No,
we went on a little bit of soccer rant here, but
that's
it's just
okay.
like imagine if Anthony like the criticism of Holland lately has been like, oh, he's not scoring quite as much as his unreal pace last year, and also like he's not fitting in with the team super well in terms of doing other things besides scoring goals. Like imagine if Anthony Edwards won a ring this year, and then next year everyone goes, you know what? He's not really passing quite enough. Let's his prices are going to go down. Like that'd be the stupid. If he won a ring, he would be the most hyped thing for the next. He would have 2 years of living off that, doing whatever he wants.
Yeah,
And like in soccer, it's just like Holland isn't passing enough. What do you mean?
yeah, I know. It's, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Talk
Yeah.
to me about like your collecting journey. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit in over the
Mm,
last, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, but
yeah.
for the listeners, like, how does your collecting? You started with John Collins.
Mm,
How do you even decide you want to start collecting? Like,
yeah.
where do sports cards come from?
Yeah, so I mean, the very original part of the journey was back in 2003. My parents, I'll have to ask them. Unfortunately, I don't think they remember at all. I'm curious how they got this idea. It was like after school one day. They're like, "Oh, like you and your friend, let's go to the card shop and try to get some LeBron James rookies. Like you guys should open some packs. That'd be fun. We heard about this LeBron kid." And I went and I was like, "Dude, this is awesome." And I was just obsessed with it. I remember it's funny like how things kind of connect. I never really realized it, but like watching YouTube box breaks, like early YouTube, I was obsessed with watching people open cards. And then I collected, I actually went to a couple shows when I was younger, and then like most people just kind of fell out of it, high school and college and stuff like that. And then um two of my best friends who I grew up playing basketball with, shout out Tristan and shout out Darius who works at Alt. He was like big in the card game from early on. He kept telling me like, dude, you got to get into it. You got to get into it. This is really fun. This is really exciting. And then it was during COVID, during the pandemic. I think we were hanging out or something. He's like, dude, we had that conversation about John Collins. He's like, if you really believe in him, just pick up some of his cards. That'd be fun. I was like, all right, you know what? I'll do it. And then I got obsessed. I started calling him. I'm like, asking him about grading. I'm like, wait, PSA 10 is a 50% chance. Like, why doesn't everyone just grade that? Like that, just the intricate. Wait, why is Prism worth more than Optic? All this stuff, just getting super obsessed with it. And I just got really into the hobby. And then I was in the Philippines playing pro basketball over there. So it gave me something to do in terms of collecting and staying in touch with my friends in the US and stuff like that. And then I started finding soccer cards and Formula One cards. And now it's just kind of grown into this big thing.
Was it difficult to participate in the hobby from the Philippines?
Uh, Very difficult, very difficult. I don't thank him enough. I had one of my friends here. He basically just managed all my carts. So I shipped everything
Wow.
to my parents' house. Then they would drop them off at his house. And then he would, if I sent them out for grading or I sold them, or he would even like he would record. I should talk about this more because this YouTube channel we fought to stay alive. He would record it on his iPhone and then send it to me, and then I would react to it and then make like a mail day video. Like that's the
Wow.
only content I could really make. And yeah, man, shout out Scott, man. He like I think I need to buy him something or do something because he saved the channel. Like he would just grading, he would send it out, PSA reveals, he would do it. So that's how I was lucky. I had someone kind of acting as me in the US. Um,
How long did
but
that
yeah,
take place for?
that was like good. The good news was it was during, I would come, especially during COVID, like I would come back every like
Yeah.
6 months. So I would still be able to do things, but that was a good, maybe a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years. So it was really hard. And part of the reason I think maybe I got so obsessed with the grinding is while I was over there, I would see all these opportunities and see people on YouTube doing all these things. I was like, man, if I could just buy a lot of cards and then sort through it right here and then send some off to grading, put some on eBay, do some whatnot, like I would just kill it. So I would tell myself that all the time. I'm like, when you get back, you got to do all this stuff that you wish you could do now. And that's kind of what I do. Once I've moved back to the US full time, I was like, I'm going to take advantage of everything we got here.
I think it's interesting because a lot of people they have that internal dialogue where they're
Mm,
like, oh, if I only had this opportunity,
Mm,
things would be different. But like not a lot of people act on it. So I think that you doing that and going full force when you had the opportunity to is like, I mean, super telling of your character for one.
mm,
So I think that you should, give yourself a pat on the back for that because like I said, there's a lot of times where people are like, oh man, if I only had the opportunity, if I only had a
yeah.
chance, like but I mean, realistically, even if you did, you'd still be doing the exact same thing. Now you had the opportunity eventually, and you're like, I'm gonna hit the ground running. I'm gonna do all the things I said I was gonna do. Now that I have all this opportunity in front of me, and I mean, look where you are now. So shout out to
Yeah,
you.
100%, and that's what it was like. I was not this. I'm the Troy Life Story podcast here, but I was playing pro
I mean,
basketball in
this
the
is a story.
Philippines.
This is about you. So
All right, okay, I'll take that.
yeah,
But I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it, but I was like, this isn't the right place for me. I need to move back. And I was like, okay, but what are you like? What are you going to do though? And I was like, all right, well, I didn't even know. It wasn't the type of thing where I'm like, okay, I'm going to move back. I'm going to be a full-time card person. But I did tell myself, I was like, if you're going to kind of take this leap, at least with cards kind of like somewhat in your mind, you have to give it the full effort. You can't come back and leave something that was stable to a degree and be like, I don't really feel like making a video today or like whatever, all this
yeah,
stuff. So it was like
yeah.
daily uploads. I'm traveling to every show, all this kind of stuff. And I had no idea. Like, I didn't know if it would work. I still don't know if it'll like fully work. We're still kind of getting there. But I was like, you got to at least, you talk, once again, you talk this big game about, oh, if I was only there. And I would get a little bit like maybe jealous is the wrong word, but I would watch these vlogs and
And
I'm
like
like,
envious, right? Like, oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'd watch these vlogs.
normal.
I'm like, I can do way better. I can do way better than this. I would do it this way. If I was there, I'd be doing it like this. I could do this, this, and that. And it's once again talking that big game. It's like I was like, all right, now you have the chance. You actually have to do it. And I think I have backed that up to a degree because I definitely with my content I try to like do something a little different, do something a little new, kind of take it to another level. And I've tried to continue to do that.
Yeah. I think I had something similar. Like I was working in person as a personal trainer during like right before the
Hmm.
pandemic. And to a degree I felt stuck.
Hmm.
Um I mean not to a degree, like I did feel stuck. I feel like there
Yeah.
was no way for me to, open my own practice without like hundreds of thousands of dollars and not only to just like rent a space but for equipment and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And I just didn't really know what to do. And then the pandemic happened and I got laid off and I'm like this is your chance. Like you got to
Yeah.
and I kind of fell into sports cards. I was like, I need to. You have any opportunity in the world to do whatever you want right now. You're basically getting
Hmm.
paid to stay at home for this brief period of time.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Do you want to cook? Do you want to make art? Do you want to,
Hmm.
draw? Like literally whatever you want to do. Um, because it had been the first time that I actually had like downtime probably ever. And I was like, you know what? I really miss collecting. I really miss collecting sports cards. And so I just started to do it and I made content about it and all of a sudden things started snowballing. And so for me, kind of in the same category as you, where I'm like, I've been given this gift. Like, and so when people are like, oh,
Hmm.
how do you make like content every day? I'm like, it's very easy for me because the alternative is going back to where I was, and I don't want to. I
Yeah.
never want to. Like I felt I spent years being like, if I only had a chance, and then I was given that chance, and I still I have that chance in front of me right now, and the only way to make sure, I mean, even doing that isn't going to guarantee that I stay here,
Hmm.
but let me tell you what not doing that is going to do. It's going to guarantee that I don't stay here, right?
For
So
sure.
I was like, there's only one option here, and that is to just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I understand. Sometimes, unfortunately, with me, it's almost kind of gone the other way. I feel that immense sense of guilt 24/7. And that's, you can probably relate. Do you do, I see the stuff in the back. Do you do
Yeah.
like personal training, like virtually or stuff
Yeah,
now?
yeah. So I do virtual personal training now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. So, like, you can relate doing things on when you're doing your own thing. It's like, I can never turn off though. That's the downside. Like before, like 9 to 5, I know my friends, when you get home at 5, you don't give two S's about what's going on at your work for a lot of them. But for me, it's like, I'm like, I want this to keep going. So it's like, if I'm just sitting on my couch, I'm like, okay, I could be listing some stuff on eBay right now, or even worse, like, oh, what if there's a deal? Just go check. There might be something ending on auction, or oh, maybe what are you doing tonight? Just do a whatnot stream. Just do it. Or oh, you could be doing a short right now. And that's something I've kind of struggled with, where it's like there's no separation between the two. It's like I just constantly gotta be doing something, or I feel guilty about it.
Yeah, I mean, it actually happened to me like the Sunday before the expo. So the Sunday
Mm,
of the week before the expo, I was pretty zonked, and I was like,
mm,
okay, I'm gonna just like relax. Like I have
yeah.
nothing to do. I had like done literally everything I needed to do up until Sunday, and I
Mm,
knew like Monday onward was gonna be
yeah.
busy stuff leading up to the expo, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, okay, I finally have an opportunity to relax. I'm gonna
Mm,
just binge watch television and,
yeah.
make food at home, whatever. Not gonna leave my house.
Mm,
And probably like 3 or 4 hours into my day, I was like, you know what? There's a card show like
yeah.
45 minutes from here. Why not go? And I'm like, I convinced myself that I was going because like, like, oh, like, let's see what happens. But like
Mm,
realistically, I'm like, oh man, what if I get a deal? Like what if I get a
yeah.
deal? What if I find something that, yeah, I don't know. You're right. There's no separation. And when you create like a life that's surrounded around like your hobby, because like I mean this
Mm,
is my hobby too, right?
yeah.
And when that starts to become like a means for generating profit, I think it's like it is again very tough to now find like you almost have to add like a new hobby in. You're like, okay, like I
Yeah.
just monetized my hobby. Now I have to like fucking find a new one or really find like ways to root yourself in that hobby, right? And so for me, it was
True.
like, even if I'm buying and selling stuff in the background and like creating content, which I still enjoy, like I love doing all of that stuff,
Mm,
but underlying, like yesterday, I had to buy a PC card. I was like, no, like I'm gonna, like I just feel like, and again, it's not crazy expensive, but I was like, I have to remember like why I'm here and
yeah.
just like continue to find little ways to fulfill me on top of like these big ways.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, 100%. You see, I got the golf clubs there in the background. I've been trying to pick up a little bit of a new hobby as well. I'm like, oh, I need to get back into that. That'd be a good because it would be it's perfect. You get on the course for 4 hours, and I try to put my phone away, so there's not even a way for me to check my email, check Instagram, or any of that stuff. So now that I'm vocalizing it, I'm even going to try a little bit more to get more into it.
I love that. Do you have you golfed before?
Yeah, yeah, I've played for like I mean, I've played my friends are super into it. I've played like I play like 2 or 3 rounds a year for probably like 4 or 5 years now.
That's not
And I'm
bad.
and I'm all right. I'm glad. I always wanted to get to the point I'm like it's just annoying. I don't know if you've played before, but if you
Played
go
like
out with your
four
friend
times.
Okay. When
Yeah,
I first started, it's like I couldn't even go out with my friends because I would just be missing the ball and people are like waiting for me and I
yeah,
can't really be a part of the experience. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
I want to at least be good enough where the ball travels forward most of
yeah,
the time and we're taking the roughly like I might take one extra swing than them, but we're playing the same game.
yeah.
So luckily I feel like I'm there now, but now I'm like, okay, I want to like actually improve, and hopefully take some lessons or something. So that's play number two for me.
I love that. What
Yeah.
are what are some plans aside from golf
Mhm.
for your channel, for your collecting, for the remainder of the year for you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Collecting wise, I don't know. I always people ask me about my PC. I'm pretty boring. Like, there's not at this point. There's not a ton I want to add. Like, John Collins has been mentioned like 30 times in this video, but I got his flawless one of one collegiate auto from When We're
Nice.
Awake. Like, that's like my grail
Huge.
card. Like, if I
Yeah.
any card, that's the one, and I got it. And then like Christian Teo, a soccer player, I think I mentioned I'm a big fan of him. I got his Prism Gold. A couple other, I got their Prism Golds. There's not too much more I want. Like Tosin, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a soccer player for Fulham and
Yeah.
he's super into the hobby. He has like
Yeah.
an Instagram about it. He does the breaks and everything. And
Yeah.
I got to meet him a couple times at the London Card Show and we stayed in touch. Super nice guy. I want a really nice card of his just to remind me of all those that I mentioned this talking to someone else, but it's like I don't need a card from every time I've gone to London or to get every like random stuff. It's like I just want one card of his, and then that'll remind me of all the great times, like going to London and seeing a game and being at the pub with my friends over there.
Yeah.
That kind of that's all I need. So PC wise, not going to pick up a ton in terms of the channel. I just want to do I want to do fun stuff and do videos that I really enjoy. I would say
Yeah.
that's kind of my focus now. I think that I'm always going to have the mail days and the card show vlogs and stuff like that. But it's just kind of like, I know I built it up where I'm like, okay, now I have a system for it. It's consistent. I have an editor and stuff helping me out. And we got that stuff going quick. But I was actually just doing it this morning, writing out ideas that I really like. Like one random one is someone, if you watch this and you make it all the way here and you steal it, you deserve it. But the Reds, the Cincinnati Reds, there's a card, like little card, I'm not even sure if it's not a full shop, but they have like a little card store in their
Yeah.
stadium.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that would be a cool video. I think that would really be people like, oh my God, a card shop in a baseball stadium. I want to go check that out. And I'm like, that'd be cool to go to the game and buy a card like inside of the stadium and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I was like, that kind of excites me. I think that would be a cool concept, something different that people haven't seen. I want to take stuff like that and really just aggressively, I guess, I want to take a step back to take a step forward. Like really be like, all right, what is a good video? Really think about it, plan it, and then put it out there. That's what's really been energizing me lately. Versus, I love my card show vlogs and people love them, but they just kind of like happen,
Yeah. I
versus
mean,
a
it's just like,
real process.
yeah, just like part, I mean, that was just like recording and it's like
Yep,
you're, yeah, right. Like it's like recording the process versus creating the process, if that makes sense.
correct. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I think that more people relate to watching you during your process. And I
Mhm.
think that's why it's necessary. It helps like build value. It helps people understand who you are and really kind of like,
Yeah,
uh,
it's funny you say that because this sounds like I've always hated when people take themselves so seriously because like I make YouTube videos about cardboard. It's really not that deep. I am not
yeah,
an artist by any means. Let me get that out there. But saying that, you know, that's like you said, when people have seen my journey and my process, that has felt the best for me. And I know people have loved that the most, right? Like if I do a card show vlog, and once again, I'm taking myself so seriously. I love card show vlogs. They're great to watch, but it's like I'm just there buying. You didn't really learn anything about me, and then there
yeah,
was no journey, right?
yeah.
But when I've made certain videos, like I bought a $10,000 collection in Hawaii, and I didn't get scammed. Things went wrong. Long story short, I lost like let's call it $5,000 on it. People got to see a whole journey. They got to see how did I react to that? How did I treat the person who did that to me? What am I going to do to kind of fix it? What did I learn going forward? And people like love that video. And that video performed so well because it hit all those things that you talked about. And I'm like, okay, well, that felt the best for me too. I was like, that's the kind of videos I want to make.
I love that. That's very interesting. And I mean, you're a super genuine guy, and that's, why I think that you and I connect on such
Yeah.
a great level. Brother, I want you to shamelessly plug whatever you want right now for anyone who's made it this far, and hopefully, that translates into more success on your horizon. So go for it.
Yeah, well, you heard it at the eBay stage, and guess what? You're going to hear it again. Speaking of those videos, my last video I made was me and my girlfriend opened a pack of basketball cards, and whatever the last card was, we flew and saw that game. And the video was a ton of effort. I enjoyed making it so much. And I think if people like, if you watch it, you'll enjoy the video. So if you want to see something a little different, go please check that out. Channel Trike 415 Sports Cards. That's about it. Yeah, just come interact. Would love to meet anybody, talk to anybody, any support you guys would give, more than happy for.
Love it. Troy, brother, thank you so much for taking the time to join and to share your journey and provide such a safe space for others to, create as well as
Mm.
just be themselves. Team, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Cardboard Coach featuring Troy Reich, aka Trike 415. You heard the man. Go follow him on all channels. For now, Coach Go and Trike are out of here. Peace.